At the supermarket, my own daughter-in-law and grandson shamed me for being a few dollars short. They called me useless, a burden eating their food, in front of everyone. My eyes blurred with tears, ready to put back essentials. But then, a voice from the past, a kind face recognized my maiden name and paid my bill, hinting at a connection lost for decades. This is my story. Like, share, and tell me where you're listening from. The fluorescent lights of the supermarket hummed a dull, indifferent tune above Eleanor's head, mirroring the sinking feeling in her stomach. At 67, she knew the drill. The polite smile to the cashier, the practiced fumble in her worn leather wallet, and the inevitable moment of dread. Her fingers brushed against a few crumpled bills, then a handful of change. Her heart tightened. $17, $17 short. Behind her, the low murmur of conversation had begun to build, punctuated by the clatter of carts and the impatient shifting of feet. She could feel their eyes, a collective gaze of mild annoyance, perhaps judgment. It was the familiar weight of being an inconvenience, a delay in the efficient flow of modern life. Her cheeks flushed with a heat that had nothing to do with the store's temperature. Her mind raced, desperately sifting through the modest pile of groceries on the conveyor belt. What could she sacrifice? The small bottle of medication for her aching joints? No, that was non-negotiable. The loaf of whole wheat bread, essential for sandwiches for Lily, her youngest grandchild, who loved them with peanut butter, the carton of milk, a staple for both Lily and Noah, her other grandchild, or the package of chicken breasts which she had planned to turn into Noah's favorite soup, a rare treat she knew he adored. Each item seemed to scream its necessity, making the choice an agonizing one. Just as she was about to mouth an apology and begin the humiliating process of removal, a voice sharp and laced with an edge of youthful irritation cut through the noise. "Grandma Eleanor, what's taking so long?" Eleanor turned slowly, her heart sinking further. It was Liam, her 28-year-old grandson, his face a telltale shade of flushed embarrassment. He stood a little behind her, as if to distance himself from the scene, but his presence only amplified her mortification. Before she could offer an explanation, another voice, even sharper, sliced through the air. "You're holding up the entire line because you can't afford groceries?" Serafina, Liam's wife, Eleanor's daughter-in-law, materialized beside him, her perfectly styled blonde hair, an impeccably tailored coat making Eleanor feel even more disheveled and inadequate. Serafina's eyes, usually cool and calculating, now blazed with undisguised annoyance. The question hung in the air, a public accusation drawing the attention of everyone within earshot. Eleanor felt the full weight of shame descend upon her. The piercing gazes that had been merely mild annoyance now seemed to intensify, burning into her skin. She imagined their silent thoughts. An old woman can't even pay for her own food. Her voice, when she finally found it, was barely a whisper. "I just need to put a few things back." Liam, instead of offering comfort or discretion, simply nodded in agreement with his wife, adding his own sting to the public humiliation. "She's right, Grandma. You live in our house, eat our food, and we pay for everything. It's really not fair to everyone else." His words, meant perhaps to reinforce Serafina's point, landed like a physical blow. They echoed the unspoken resentments that simmered beneath the surface of their shared home. Eleanor bit her lip, the taste of metallic blood filling her mouth. She knew they paid for everything, or at least they constantly reminded her that they did. It was the price of her shelter, of having a roof over her head after her own small pension proved insufficient. Serafina, clearly emboldened by Liam's backing, delivered the final, cutting blow. Her voice, though still hushed enough to be a private conversation, carried distinctly through the suddenly quiet line. "If you were useful, it would be different. If you actually contributed something instead of just being another mouth to feed." The words hung in the air, cold and unforgiving. Eleanor's vision blurred, a hot wave of tears threatening to spill. Useless. Another mouth to feed. The sheer cruelty of it, spoken so casually in public by her own family. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear the blurring film from her eyes, ready to reach for the chicken, then the milk, then anything to escape this agonizing moment. She would put everything back. She would go home empty-handed rather than endure another second of their disdain. Just as her hand trembled toward the edge of the conveyor belt, a deep, warm voice, surprisingly gentle yet firm, cut through the tension. "Excuse me, I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Eleanor froze, her head snapping up. She turned towards the sound, her tear-filled eyes barely registering the figure standing directly behind Serafina and Liam. He was a tall man, his silver hair neatly combed, his shoulders broad beneath a well-tailored jacket. His kind brown eyes met hers, and in that instant, a flicker of something familiar, a ghost of a memory, sparked within her. Her breath hitched. Serafina, however, was not one to be easily deterred. She turned, her face a mask of annoyance at the interruption. "There's no misunderstanding, sir. This is a family matter. We're just trying to sort out my mother-in-law's inability to pay for her groceries." The man's gaze did not waver from Eleanor, ignoring Serafina completely. He took a step forward, his voice softer now, almost a murmur, yet it resonated with an unmistakable clarity. "Eleanor? Eleanor Monroe?" The name, her maiden name. It hadn't been spoken aloud in decades, not since her wedding day. It hit her with the force of a forgotten melody, a whisper from a lifetime ago. A gasp escaped her lips, a mix of shock and dawning recognition. "Frederick," she whispered, the name tasting foreign and yet utterly familiar on her tongue. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face, a warmth emanating from him that felt like the sunrise after the longest, darkest night. He moved past the stunned Serafina and Liam, stepping directly to the cashier. "I'll pay for everything here," he said, pulling out his wallet with a confident ease. Then his eyes, still full of that incredible warmth, met Eleanor's again. "And then, Eleanor, we have 45 years of catching up to do." The transition from the bustling supermarket to the quiet comfort of the local cafe felt surreal. Frederick had insisted, his gentle hand on her elbow, guiding her through the automatic doors and into his waiting car. Now they sat across from each other in a secluded corner booth, the scent of fresh coffee and baked goods filling the air, a stark contrast to the sterile supermarket and the bitter taste of public humiliation that still lingered. Eleanor clutched her teacup, her hands trembling slightly, the heat a small comfort against the lingering chill of her recent ordeal. She was still reeling, the shock of Frederick's sudden appearance and the revelation of her maiden name mixing with the raw sting of Serafina and Liam's words. Frederick, sensing her turmoil, reached across the table, his fingers gently covering hers. His touch was warm, firm, and familiar, despite the passage of time. "Eleanor," he began, his voice soft, "I thought about you every single day for 45 years. The simple sincerity of his words was enough to shatter Eleanor's composure. The tears she had desperately tried to hold back in the supermarket finally spilled over, tracing warm paths down her wrinkled cheeks. Her voice, thick with emotion, cracked as she spoke. "But why, Frederick? Why didn't you ever come back? You promised. You said you'd be back by Christmas." A shadow crossed Frederick's face, his kind eyes clouding with a sorrow that mirrored her own. He withdrew his hand, leaning back slightly, as if bracing himself for a difficult confession. "I did come back, Eleanor. I returned during Christmas break, just like I promised. I drove straight to your house, so excited to see you. But when I got there, your mother answered the door." He paused, taking a slow, deep breath. "She told me you were engaged to Arthur. She said you wanted me to leave you alone, that you had moved on and didn't want to hear from me ever again." Eleanor gasped, her tea forgotten. The words struck her with the force of an unexpected blow, twisting a knife in an old wound she thought had long since healed into a scar. "Frederick, no, that's not what happened at all." Her voice rose with an incredulous protest, the injustice of it all suddenly overwhelming. "I waited for you. I waited and waited, but you never came. My mother, she never said anything about you coming back. She just told me you'd forgotten about me, that you'd found someone else at university and moved on." Frederick nodded slowly, his expression grim. "I know, Eleanor. I learned the truth a couple of years ago." He explained how, after his wife passed away, a nagging curiosity, a desire for closure had prompted him to hire a private investigator. He uncovered everything. Your mother, bless her soul, was fiercely protective. She never approved of us. of a small-town girl falling for a boy from a different background, a different future. She deliberately intercepted my letters, forged replies, and convinced both of us that the other had moved on. He shook his head, a heavy sigh escaping him. She wanted you to marry Arthur. She believed he was a more suitable match, stable, from a good family, right there in town. Eleanor felt a fresh wave of tears, this time for the lost years, the stolen future. I waited, Frederick, she repeated, her voice choked. I only married Arthur after I truly believed you had forgotten me. I cared for Arthur, of course. He was a good man, a kind husband in his own way. But I never loved him, not the way I loved you, not like that first, overwhelming love. Frederick's eyes softened, a shared sorrow passing between them. I understand, Eleanor. I truly do. He then shared his own story, a life lived without her. After your mother's words, I was devastated. I threw myself into my studies, then into building my business. I married Beatrice a few years later. She was a wonderful woman, kind and loving. We had 2 beautiful children, a son and a daughter. I loved her deeply, truly. She brought so much joy into my life. He paused, his gaze meeting hers, intense and honest. But you, Eleanor, you were the great love of my life. You were the one that got away. A day never truly passed without a thought of you, a wonder of what could have been. The raw honesty of his confession was both a balm and a fresh wound. Eleanor found herself pouring out her own life story the years after Arthur. My son, Samuel, she began, her voice heavy with grief. He passed away 5 years ago, far too young. It was sudden, an accident. She swallowed hard, the memory still fresh and painful. After that, I was alone, my pension barely covered in my small apartment. Liam, Samuel's son, offered for me to move in with him and Serafina, to help with their children, Lily and Noah. It seemed like the only option at the time. She gestured vaguely. And you saw how that's working out. Frederick's expression darkened, his earlier sadness now replaced by a flicker of anger. What I saw at the supermarket was cruel, Eleanor, unforgivable. And you are not a burden, not in any sense of the word. His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. Eleanor offered a weak, helpless shrug. But where else would I go? I don't have any money of my own, Frederick. Not enough to live independently. Not anymore. And they constantly remind me of it, of everything they do for me. The words tasted bitter, even in the warm cafe. You're their grandmother, Frederick insisted, his voice unwavering. You should be treasured, respected, cherished, not treated like an inconvenience. That's not how families should behave. He leaned back, taking a sip of his own coffee, a thoughtful expression on his face. Funny thing about that supermarket, he mused, almost to himself. I actually retired early from my business a few years back. Not that I ever truly stopped. It's a small chain, really, mostly in this region. He looked at her, a hint of a twinkle in his eye. Morrison's, for instance, I happen to own it. Eleanor's eyes widened. Morrison's? The very place where she had just been publicly humiliated, where he had found her. The irony was almost too much to bear. Frederick leaned forward again, his voice dropping to a warm, inviting tone. Eleanor, I know this is a lot to take in, but I was wondering if you would consider having dinner with me tomorrow night. Just 2 old friends catching up. Nothing more, nothing less. A spark, one she hadn't known existed, flickered within Eleanor. A forgotten warmth spread through her chest. It was a lifeline, a glimmer of hope in the quiet despair she had grown accustomed to. A chance, yes, Frederick, she heard herself say, the word coming easily, naturally. Yes, I'd like that very much. As she looked into his kind brown eyes, a thought bloomed in her mind, fragile yet exhilarating. I think our story might just be beginning. The next evening, the soft glow of dusk painted the sky as Frederick's sleek silver sedan pulled up to the curb in front of Liam and Serafina's house. Eleanor, wearing the best dress she owned, a simple dark blue number she hadn't touched in years, felt a flutter of anticipation she hadn't realized she was capable of. Frederick emerged from the car, looking distinguished in a tailored suit, and opened her door with a gentle flourish, offering her his hand. His touch, so respectful and tender, sent a shiver down her spine. It had been years, decades even, since a man had treated her with such care, such genuine consideration. At the elegant restaurant, bathed in the warm glow of subdued lighting and soft music, they were led to a secluded table by a window. Frederick, once they were seated, leaned forward, his eyes holding hers with an intense sincerity. "You know, Eleanor," he began, his voice a low rumble, "I spent so many years imagining this, imagining a life with you. What it would have been like, the children we might have had, the quiet evenings, the laughter." He paused, a wistful smile touching his lips. It was a painful exercise at times, but also a comforting one. He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Now all I want is to simply spend time with you, to rediscover the woman I knew, and to get to know the woman you've become." A blush crept up Eleanor's neck. The restaurant was undeniably expensive, the menu filled with dishes she could barely pronounce, let alone afford. When the waiter brought the wine list, Frederick effortlessly ordered a bottle of deep red, and Eleanor's eyes widened at the price. "Frederick," she murmured, pulling her hand back slightly, feeling suddenly out of place. "This is too much. I'm not used to... this is far too expensive." Frederick simply smiled, a reassuring warmth in his eyes. "Nonsense, Eleanor. Tonight, you are my guest, and I intend to spoil you. Please allow me this small pleasure." She looked down at her hands, a lump forming in her throat. "I can't remember the last time anyone took me out to dinner," she confessed, the words almost a whisper. It was a stark admission, one that stirred a deep sadness in Frederick's eyes, quickly followed by a flash of something akin to anger. He changed the subject gently, his tone softening. "Tell me, Eleanor, what does a typical day look like for you these days?" Eleanor hesitated, then found herself recounting the details of her life at Liam and Serafina's house. She spoke of waking before dawn to prepare breakfast for the children, of endless chores, laundry, cleaning, cooking. She described her role as a full-time, unpaid live-in housekeeper and nanny, a caretaker for everyone but herself. "I help Lily with her homework, read Noah his bedtime stories. I try to keep the house tidy, especially when Serafina has her friends over." She went on to describe her living situation. "My room is small in the back, off the laundry room. It's just a bed, a small dresser. Sometimes if they have guests, I eat my meals in the kitchen or even in my room to stay out of the way." The euphemism tasted stale on her tongue even as she uttered it. Frederick listened intently, his expression growing steadily darker, a muscle ticking in his jaw. When she finished, his voice was carefully controlled, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. "Eleanor, what you've described, that's not living with family. You're not their grandmother in that house. You're the live-in help. You're not treated like family. You're treated like an employee. No, worse than an employee because employees get paid and have days off. You don't get either of those, do you?" Her eyes welled up again, tears that seemed to be constantly lurking just beneath the surface these days. "No," she admitted, her voice trembling. "They don't give me any money for personal expenses. If I need something small like new toothpaste or a book, I have to ask Serafina, and often she says no or can it wait." Frederick's hand clenched into a fist under the table. He took a slow breath, then looked at her with an intensity that made her uneasy. "Eleanor, I need to tell you something. When I hired that investigator 2 years ago, I asked him to look into your circumstances, to find out what happened to you." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "After Arthur died, you should have been financially secure. You should have inherited the house. From what I found, it was valued at around $450,000, and Arthur had a life insurance policy around $200,000. He leaned forward, his voice firm. "Plus your own pension, a comfortable sum, if managed correctly." Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. She stared at him, unable to speak, the blood draining from her face. She remembered Arthur's will, a simple document that left everything to her. But then Liam had stepped in, so helpful, so convincing. "Yes," she whispered, the word barely audible. "Liam said, he said it was too much for me to handle. All the paperwork, the taxes. He said he would take care of everything. He sold the house." Her voice cracked. "He promised me a place to live with them, with his family. He said it was the best way, that I wouldn't have to worry about a thing." Frederick's eyes narrowed, his anger now barely contained. Eleanor, he stated, his voice devoid of any softness, I think you've been taken advantage of. I think Liam and Serafina convinced you to give up your financial security in exchange for a promise of care that they're not honoring. They've essentially stripped you of your assets and turned you into their unpaid servant. The truth, stark and brutal, hit Eleanor with the force of a tidal wave. She had known, deep down, that something wasn't right, but she had dismissed her own discomfort, told herself she was simply being ungrateful. Now, hearing it articulated so clearly, so coldly by someone outside her situation, shattered her carefully constructed denial. She pulled her hand away from his, clutching it to her chest, overwhelmed. Frederick, please, she pleaded, her voice choked with tears. I can't think about this right now. It's too much. It's too painful. He respected her wishes, sensing her distress, and steered the conversation towards lighter topics, sharing anecdotes from his own life, carefully avoiding any mention of her financial situation or her family. The rest of the meal passed in a haze for Eleanor, her mind still reeling from the revelations. On the drive back to Liam's house, as they pulled into the quiet, dimly lit street, Frederick turned off the engine and faced her. The streetlights cast long shadows, but his eyes were clear, earnest. Eleanor, he began, his voice filled with an unwavering conviction. There's something else I need to tell you. 2 years ago, when I hired that investigator to find you, it wasn't just for closure. It was because I wanted to find you. And if you were free, my intention was to propose marriage. Eleanor stared at him, her breath catching in her throat. The very air in the car seemed to thicken. He reached for her hand again, his touch gentle but firm. I loved you then, Eleanor. And seeing you again, getting to know you now, seeing the beautiful, strong woman you've become despite everything you've endured, I realize I still do. I want to care for you, Eleanor, to cherish you, to spend whatever time we have left together, giving you the life you deserve. Her mind spun, a kaleidoscope of past dreams and present pain. Marriage, to Frederick. The idea was so monumental, so utterly impossible, yet so incredibly tempting. It was a dream she had buried decades ago, believing it to be dead and gone forever. She walked into Liam's quiet house, the silence amplifying the tumultuous thoughts in her head. The familiar scent of their home, once a comfort, now felt stifling. Frederick's words echoed in her ears. I want to care for you, to cherish you. She moved through the shadows, a ghost in her own life, contemplating the impossible possibility, a future she hadn't dared to imagine. Could it be true? Could her story truly be beginning again? The night after Frederick's astonishing proposal was a blur of sleeplessness for Eleanor. His words replayed in her mind, a powerful current stirring long-buried memories of youthful love, of promises whispered under starry skies. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Could this truly be happening? Could she, Eleanor, the useless burden, truly have a second chance at happiness, at love? The idea felt both exhilarating and terrifying, a fragile dream she barely dared to acknowledge. She moved through her morning routine like a ghost, her usual efficiency replaced by a daze. Liam grunted a perfunctory good morning on his way out the door, barely glancing her way. Serafina, sharp as ever, snapped at her for not having Lily's breakfast ready precisely when she wanted it. Eleanor, honestly, you're slower than molasses this morning. What's wrong with you? Eleanor offered a mumbled apology, her mind still miles away, replaying Frederick's earnest face, his incredible proposal. Later that morning, the telephone rang. It was Frederick. His voice, gentle and full of hope, was a balm to her frayed nerves. He asked if she could meet him for lunch, just a quiet talk away from the demanding house. Eleanor hesitated. The ingrained habit of putting others first, of feeling indispensable to her daily tasks, immediately surfaced. Oh, Frederick, I don't know, she began, already mentally listing the chores waiting for her. I really should stay here. There's so much to do, and the children will be home from school soon. Frederick's voice softened even further, a subtle challenge embedded in his words. Eleanor, he asked gently, when was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Something that was purely for your own happiness? The question stopped her cold. She truly couldn't remember. Her life had become a series of obligations, of meeting the needs of others. The silence stretched, filled only with the faint hum of the refrigerator. "All right," she said, a surprising surge of defiance blooming within her. "Yes, Frederick, I'll meet you." They met at a small, unassuming diner on the outskirts of town, a place far less grand than the previous night's restaurant, but filled with a comforting, familiar warmth. Over sandwiches and coffee, Eleanor wrestled with her thoughts, finally confessing to Frederick, "Frederick, about what you told me last night, about my inheritance. I believe you. I truly do. But it's done now, isn't it? I can't undo those decisions. The house is sold, the money gone." A wave of resignation washed over her. Frederick reached across the table, taking her hand. His gaze was steady, unwavering. "Perhaps not all of it, Eleanor. But regardless of what can be recovered, that's not why I asked you here." He paused, then reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a small, velvet-covered box, dark blue, almost black. Eleanor's heart began to pound against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat. "Frederick, no," she whispered, shaking her head. "We barely know each other anymore. So much time has passed." He just smiled, a gentle, understanding smile, and pushed the box towards her. "Just open it, Eleanor." With trembling fingers, she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of cream-colored satin, lay a ring. It was a beautiful solitaire diamond, sparkling brilliantly, flanked by two tiny deep blue sapphires. Her breath caught in her own. She stared at it, a memory so vivid, so potent, that it felt as though she had been transported back in time. "Is this," she gasped, her voice barely audible, "is this the ring I bought for you all those years ago? 45 years ago?" Frederick's smile widened, his eyes twinkling. "It is, Eleanor. The very same. I carried it with me all these years." He leaned forward, his voice filled with a tender reverence. Even Beatrice knew about it. She was an incredible woman, understanding, compassionate. She knew that some loves never completely fade away, that they become a part of who you are. Tears, warm and copious, blurred Eleanor's vision once more. This time they were tears of profound emotion, a mixture of joy, sorrow, and an overwhelming sense of destiny. Frederick reached for her hand again, his thumb gently stroking her knuckles. "Eleanor Monroe," he began, his voice soft but unwavering. "Will you marry me? Will you let me spend whatever years I have left showing you how much you mean to me, how much you always have?" In that moment, something deep inside Eleanor broke free. The chains of obligation, of fear, of quietly endured humiliation seemed to snap. A profound sense of liberation washed over her. Her answer came easily, freely, a whisper born of decades of unspoken longing. "Yes," she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh, yes, Frederick." Frederick's face lit up with a radiant joy, a look of utter contentment. He carefully took the ring from its box and, with a tender touch, slipped it onto her left ring finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her, meant for her. They spent the next hour talking, excitedly planning a future that had seemed impossible just days before. Frederick spoke of his beautiful lake house, a serene retreat he had built for his retirement. He described days filled with travel, if she wished, or quiet afternoons spent reading by the fireplace. He spoke of new beginnings, of shared adventures, of simply being together. As their conversation wound down, a familiar shadow of concern crossed Eleanor's face. "But Frederick," she said, her voice tinged with apprehension, "what about my family? Liam and Serafina, the children. I can't just abandon them. They rely on me." Frederick's expression grew serious, his eyes losing some of their earlier warmth. "Eleanor," he said, his voice firm, "you need to understand something. Liam and Serafina will not be happy about this. You are about to cost them thousands of dollars a year in free labor and childcare. They've grown accustomed to their arrangement with you." Eleanor, still basking in the glow of the proposal, dismissed his concern with a wave of her hand. "Oh, they'll be fine. They'll adjust. They're resourceful." Frederick's gaze was piercing. "Eleanor, did they take you in because they truly needed your help, or because they saw an opportunity to live in help and took it? And how much of your inheritance did they actually use to care for you rather than for themselves?" His words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the painful truths from the previous night. Eleanor felt a chill despite the warmth of the diner. She pushed the thought away, focusing on the ring, the warmth of Frederick's hand. She had a new future to embrace. That evening, back in Liam's kitchen, Eleanor moved with a newfound purpose. She prepared Liam's favorite pot roast, a rich aroma filling the house. She even baked a chocolate cake, a rarity given Serafina's watchful eye on expenses. She was determined. She would gather them all, Liam, Serafina, Lily, and Noah, around the dinner table, and then she would make her announcement. I'm getting married. The words tasted powerful, liberating on her tongue. If you're finding Eleanor's story as captivating as I am, please keep watching to see what happens next. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more incredible stories. The aroma of pot roast filled the dining room, a rare treat that usually brought smiles to Liam and Serafina's faces. Tonight, Eleanor had gone the extra mile, even baking a chocolate cake for dessert. She watched the family settle around the table. Liam, ever engrossed in his phone. Serafina, meticulously arranging her napkin. Lily, her bright eyes fixed on the steaming dish. And Noah, already reaching for a dinner roll. Eleanor took a deep breath, the sparkling ring on her left hand feeling both heavy and wonderfully light. I have an announcement, Eleanor said, her voice steadier than she expected. Liam's fork, laden with a piece of tender pot roast, clattered against his ceramic plate, drawing Serafina's attention. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and alarm. Lily looked up, curious. What did you say, Grandma? Liam asked, his phone now lying forgotten beside his plate. Eleanor held up her left hand, allowing the solitaire diamond and sapphires to catch the light. A soft smile touched her lips. I'm getting married, she announced, her gaze sweeping over their stunned faces. His name is Frederick Hartwell, and we're getting married next month. A beat of silence hung in the air, thick with disbelief. Then little Lily clapped her hands together, her face alight with genuine joy. Grandma, that's wonderful, she exclaimed, her innocent delight momentarily piercing the tension. Eleanor smiled warmly at her, but her eyes quickly shifted back to Liam and Serafina. Their faces told a very different story. The shock in their eyes was quickly morphing into something cold and hard. Serafina was the first to recover, her voice sharp, cutting through the celebratory atmosphere Eleanor had hoped for. Are you out of your mind, Eleanor? You can't just get married. You're 67 years old. Her tone was not one of concern, but of utter incredulity, as if Eleanor had proposed something truly outlandish. Eleanor met her gaze, a new strength she hadn't known she possessed rising within her. Age is just a number, Serafina, and clearly it has nothing to do with finding happiness. Liam, still staring at her hand, slowly put his fork down. Grandma, you can't be serious. What if he's after your money? The question was laced with an almost absurd suspicion. Eleanor almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. What money, Liam? She retorted, the memory of Frederick's revelation still fresh and painful. She knew the truth, even if they didn't. Serafina leaned forward, her eyes narrowing to slits. The polite mask she usually wore had completely fallen away, revealing a calculating anger. What about us? What about the children? You can't just abandon your responsibilities, Eleanor. The word responsibilities hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusations. Eleanor felt a flicker of exasperation. I'm not abandoning anyone, she clarified, her voice firm. I'm simply getting married and moving into Frederick's lake house. I'll still visit, of course. She tried to offer reassurance, but her words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. A chilling silence descended, broken only by Noah's innocent munching on a dinner roll. Liam and Serafina exchanged a look, a rapid, wordless communication that Eleanor could not decipher, but which sent a prickle of unease down her spine. It was a look of shared conspiracy, of something deeply threatened. Serafina's voice, when she spoke again, was incredulous, laced with a venomous sweetness. So you're just going to leave after everything we've done for you, Eleanor? After we opened our home to you when you had nowhere else to go? The aggrieved tone was almost theatrical, designed to make Eleanor feel guilty. Liam interjected, his voice rising, a tremor of indignation in it. Do you even appreciate anything, Grandma? Because it doesn't seem like it. We've supported you for years, provided you with a home, with food, with a family. His words were an accusation, a bitter tally of perceived debts. Eleanor tried to defend herself, her voice shaking slightly. I helped Liam. I've cooked, cleaned, looked after the children every single day. I've been a constant presence here. But Liam merely scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping him. Help? Is that what you call it? You've been living here rent-free, eating our food, using our electricity, without contributing a single cent. He conveniently forgot the years of unpaid labor, the invaluable childcare she provided. Serafina, seeing her opening, snapped, Yes, and we only did it because we felt sorry for you, because you were this bummed, lonely old woman with nowhere to go, no one to care for you. The words hit Eleanor like a physical slap, burning her cheeks. Sad, lonely, useless. The echoes of the supermarket humiliation came rushing back, amplified by the malice in Serafina's voice. Liam, his expression hardening into a calculating mask, then delivered the ultimate blow. If you leave us, Grandma, he said, his voice low and menacing, if you choose this stranger over your family, you won't be welcome back. You won't see the children anymore. His threat hung in the air, cold and absolute. Serafina nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on Eleanor, an unwavering resolve in their depths. That's right, Eleanor. If you abandon us now, there won't be any coming back. No more visits, no more contact. We'll simply move on. Eleanor looked around the table at these people she had loved, had sacrificed for, had dedicated her life to helping. And in their eyes, she saw not family, but cold, calculating strangers who viewed her not as a person, but as a resource. Her heart ached with a profound sense of betrayal. The realization settled heavily within her. This wasn't love, it was exploitation. They didn't care about her happiness. They only cared about what she provided. Her earlier joy and certainty began to waver, replaced by a deep sorrow. She could hear Lily's innocent voice asking for Grandma. Could she truly cut herself off from them? She looked at the ring, then back at their hardened faces. I need to think about this, she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, the fight suddenly draining out of her. She pushed her untouched plate away, her appetite completely gone. The 2 weeks that followed Eleanor's announcement were a living nightmare, a slow, grinding war zone of passive-aggressive comments and clipped orders. Liam and Serafina barely spoke directly to her, communicating mostly through Srisa's eye rolls and pointed remarks about her impending abandonment. The pot roast dinner was the last time they had allowed her to eat with them. After that, she was relegated to the kitchen counter, or more often, her small room. The children, however, sensed the shift. Lily, with her perceptive nature, asked Eleanor repeatedly, Grandma, are you okay? Why are Mom and Dad acting funny? Noah, still too young to articulate his feelings, became unusually clingy, following Eleanor like a shadow, often reaching for her hand or seeking comfort in her lap. Their innocent concern was the only thing that kept Eleanor from succumbing to the overwhelming despair. Frederick, a beacon of unwavering support, called every single day. His voice, warm and gentle, was a lifeline, a tangible connection to a future that felt increasingly distant amidst the hostility of her present. Just leave, Eleanor, he urged, his voice filled with concern. Pack your things and come stay with me. You don't deserve this treatment. But Eleanor couldn't bring herself to do it, not yet. I can't abandon the children like that, Frederick, she would whisper back, her chest aching at the thought of leaving Lily and Noah behind, of their young, innocent hearts getting caught in the crossfire. Frederick, ever patient, gently but firmly pointed out the truth. Eleanor, they're using your love for those children to keep you trapped. They know you won't leave if you think you're hurting them. Eleanor knew he was right, a bitter pill she was struggling to swallow. The thought of a life without Lily and Noah's laughter, without their hugs, was almost unbearable. The breaking point arrived on a particularly rainy Thursday evening. Liam and Serafina were hosting an important dinner for Liam's boss, Robert, and his wife, Catherine. Eleanor had spent the entire day in the kitchen, carefully preparing an elaborate 3-course meal, a delicate mushroom consommé, her signature herb-crusted salmon with roasted asparagus, and a decadent chocolate lava cake. She had put her heart and soul into every dish, hoping to contribute something positive, to perhaps earn a modicum of respect. Just as she was arranging the plates for the main course, Serafina appeared in the kitchen doorway, impeccably dressed and radiating a chilling elegance. Without preamble, her voice low and utterly devoid of warmth, she delivered her decree. Eleanor, I need you to eat in your room tonight. Robert and Catherine don't need to know about our family situation, and frankly, we need the extra space at the table. Eleanor stared at her dumbfounded. The delicious aroma of the salmon filled the kitchen, a cruel irony. She, who had cooked the entire meal, was now being ordered to take a plate to her room and stay there, out of sight, out of mind. It was a clear, unambiguous message. She was not family. She was merely the help, an inconvenient presence to be hidden away when company arrived. With a heavy heart, Eleanor dished a small portion onto a plate and retreated to her cramped room, the former office that had been converted into her meager living space. She sat on her narrow bed, the untouched dinner steaming beside her, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and conversation drifting from the dining room. She was excluded from the very atmosphere she had created, a ghost in her own home. A few minutes later, as she silently picked at her food, a particularly sharp peal of Serafina's laughter reached her. Then Eleanor distinctly heard her daughter-in-law's voice, bright and proud, explaining to their guests, "Oh, this herb-crusted salmon? It's my own recipe." A family favorite, actually. The lie, so casual, so brazen, twisted a knot in Eleanor's stomach. Her own recipe, her effort, her skill, all casually appropriated and credited to Serafina. An hour later, a soft knock came from her door. It was Lily, her small face clouded with concern. "Grandma Eleanor," she whispered, peeking in, "why aren't you eating with us? Are you sad?" Eleanor's heart melted. She pulled Lily onto her lap, hugging her close. "No, sweet pea," she lied gently. "Grandma just wanted some quiet time." Lily, however, possessed an uncanny perception. She looked up at Eleanor, her eyes full of wisdom beyond her years. "Grandma," she said softly, "I think you should marry him if he makes you happy. I'll miss you if you move away, but I want you to be happy." Lily's innocent words, coming after the deliberate cruelty of Serafina and the casual theft of her labor, were a revelation. They stripped away the last vestiges of Eleanor's doubt. After Lily went back to bed, Eleanor truly looked at her life in that small, converted office. Hiding in a forgotten corner, being told to stay out of sight, her very presence treated as an inconvenience. This was not a home, it was a prison disguised as a family refuge. She had allowed herself to be diminished, devalued, and exploited, and she had done it out of a misguided sense of loyalty and a fear of being truly alone. But she wasn't alone. She had Frederick. The next morning, with Liam and Serafina safely out of the house and at work, Eleanor made the call. Her voice, though still tinged with emotion, was firm, resolute. "Frederick," she said, "I want to see your house." Within the hour, Frederick was there, his face alight with relief and understanding. He drove her to his lake house, a stunning retreat nestled amidst towering trees, overlooking a serene body of water. The spacious living room with its panoramic views, the gourmet kitchen, the sun-drenched master bedroom, it was all breathtaking. He showed her the walk-in closet, a space larger than her entire room at Liam and Serafina's. "Eleanor," he said, turning to face her, his hands gently grasping her shoulders, "you deserve this. This house, this life, this love. You deserve to be cherished, respected, and happy." And Eleanor, looking into his kind, loving eyes, knew with absolute certainty that she did. From the lake house, they drove directly to the courthouse, and with a quiet sense of purpose and a shared smile, they applied for their marriage license. The first step towards a new life, finally taken. Eleanor returned from the courthouse that afternoon, the crisp marriage license tucked safely in her purse, a profound sense of purpose settling over her. As she stepped through the front door of Liam and Serafina's house, she immediately sensed the change in the atmosphere. The usual quiet tension had morphed into something heavier, more menacing. She found Liam and Serafina waiting for her in the living room, perched on the edge of the sofa, their expressions thunderous. Their faces were tight with barely suppressed rage, their eyes narrowed in accusation. Serafina was the first to speak, her voice thin and sharp, bristling with indignation. "Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence. Ms. Davis, our neighbor, saw you leave with that man, and she said you were gone for hours. She didn't bother to hide her suspicion, her tone implying Eleanor had been up to no good. Eleanor met her gaze, no longer intimidated. Yes, she stated calmly, her voice even. I was with Frederick. We went to his house. The omission of the courthouse visit was intentional, a small withholding of information that gave her a sense of power. Liam's voice was cold, cutting through the air like ice. So you're really going through with this insanity, Grandma? You're actually really going to marry this stranger? His disbelief was palpable, tinged with anger and a hint of desperation. Then Serafina stood up, her face flushed with fury. She moved closer, invading Eleanor's personal space, her eyes blazing with venom. You're a foolish old woman, Eleanor, she spat, the words dripping with contempt. You're being taken advantage of by a man who probably has a dozen other lonely widows on the hook. Don't you see that? He's after something, and you're too naive to realize it. Eleanor felt a tremor of anger, but she held her ground, Frederick's words echoing in her mind. You deserve to be cherished, respected, and happy. Serafina continued her tirade, her voice rising in pitch. You've lived in our house rent-free for 8 years, Eleanor. 8 years. We fed you, clothed you, included you in our family. And this is how you repay us? By running off with some old man you barely know? Her voice dripped with self-pity and a sense of profound betrayal. Liam, not to be outdone, added his own cruel assessment, a bitter, scoffing laugh escaping him. Honestly, Grandma, you've been nothing but dead weight around here. You should be contributing something meaningful, something substantial, instead of chasing a ridiculous romantic fantasy at your age. The words, dead weight, were the final straw. Something inside Eleanor snapped. The rage she had suppressed for so long, the quiet indignities she had endured, surged to the surface. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet, but it carried a steel she didn't know she possessed, cutting through their self-righteous anger. Dead weight? Eleanor repeated, her voice deceptively calm. I've been your unpaid housekeeper, your nanny, and your cook for 8 years, Liam. Do you have any idea how much that would cost you on the open market? Thousands. Tens of thousands of dollars a year. She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. And that's not even counting the fact that for much of that time, I contributed my Social Security check to household expenses, all while living in a room the size of a closet. Serafina rolled her eyes, scoffing. Oh, please. You've had a free ride, Eleanor. You had nowhere else to go. Eleanor stood taller, her body shaking with the force of her suppressed rage, but her gaze was unwavering. A free ride? I gave up my home, my independence, my dignity to help you, to be there for my grandchildren, to be family, and what have I gotten in return? To be treated like a servant, to be hidden away when company comes, to be told I'm a burden, a useless old woman, to have my contributions dismissed and my very presence treated as an inconvenience. Her voice cracked slightly, but she refused to let the tears fall. Liam's face turned a dangerous shade of red, his anger now fully unleashed. If you're so miserable here, Eleanor, then leave, he roared, slamming his fist on the armrest of the sofa. He rose, towering over her, his eyes blazing. But don't expect to see these children again. That's your choice. You abandon us. You abandon them. Serafina, her face contorted with a vicious glee, echoed his threat. That's right. If you choose some stranger over your family, Eleanor, then you're not family anymore. You'll be nothing to us. The threat meant to crush her, to force her back into submission, instead brought Eleanor a strange, liberating sense of clarity. For years, she had been held captive by their manipulation, by her own fear of being alone, by her fierce love for Lily and Noah. But now, seeing them for who they truly were, selfish, grasping, and utterly devoid of genuine affection, the choice became clear. Her voice was calm, almost detached, as she looked at them. You're right, she said. I am choosing. I'm choosing dignity over degradation. I'm choosing love over manipulation. And I'm choosing a future where I am valued, not exploited. She took a deep, steadying breath. I'll be packed and gone by tomorrow evening. She paused at the doorway to her room, turning back to face them one last time. You've shown me exactly who you are today, both of you, and I won't forget it. As she closed her bedroom door behind her, shutting out the toxic environment, she heard Serafina's panicked voice, high-pitched and frantic. She's bluffing, Liam. She'll never actually leave. She has nowhere to go. But Eleanor knew with a certainty that resonated deep within her soul that for the first time in a very long time, she wasn't bluffing. She was finally free. Frederick arrived precisely at 5 p.m. the next evening, just as Eleanor had requested. She was already on the front steps of Liam and Serafina's house, her two battered suitcases beside her, a small purse clutched in her hand. The house behind her was quiet, the windows dark. Liam and Serafina were conspicuously absent from her departure, offering neither a goodbye nor a final confrontation. Their silence was a chilling affirmation of their indifference, a stark contrast to the dramatic threats of the previous day. Frederick approached, his face etched with a gentle understanding. He didn't need to speak. He simply took her suitcases, his strong hands easily lifting the burdens she had carried for so long. As they drove away, leaving the house and its suffocating atmosphere behind, Eleanor felt an exhilarating sense of freedom, a lightness she hadn't experienced in decades. For the first time in a very long time, she had chosen her own path, made her own decision, and embraced a future entirely on her terms. The old fear of being alone, of having nowhere to go, had vanished, replaced by a profound sense of peace. Frederick, ever thoughtful, understood that despite their deep connection, they needed to rebuild their relationship with patience and respect. He hadn't brought her straight to their shared bedroom. Instead, he led her to a bright, airy guest room in his beautiful lake house. It was a haven of tranquility, with a comfortable bed, a window overlooking the shimmering lake, and, to Eleanor's delight, built-in bookshelves lining one wall, already filled with a diverse collection of books. This, he said, gesturing around the room, is a place where you can read, or write, or just think. A room that's entirely yours, Eleanor. A place where you can simply be. His words resonated deeply, acknowledging her need for space, for autonomy, for the quiet solitude she had so rarely been afforded. The next morning, as they sat together over a leisurely breakfast, Frederick handed her a small envelope. Inside was a bank card and a note. "There's $10,000 on this card," he explained, seeing her bewildered expression. "This is for you, for anything you need, anything you want. You're not my dependent, Eleanor. You're my partner. Equal in every way. That stops now." His gaze was firm, leaving no room for argument. It was another profound gesture, a dismantling of the old power dynamics, a true affirmation of her worth. 3 weeks later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Eleanor and Frederick were married in the garden of his lake house. It was a small, intimate ceremony, attended only by Frederick's children and grandchildren. Eleanor wore a cream-colored lace dress that Frederick had insisted on buying for her, a garment that made her feel radiant, truly beautiful, for the first time in years. As she stood beside Frederick, his hand warm and strong in hers, exchanging vows beneath the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees, Eleanor realized something profound. She wasn't just marrying Frederick, she was finally becoming who she was always meant to be, the woman who loved, who was respected and cherished. 2 blissful months passed in a flurry of shared laughter, quiet conversations, and the simple joy of companionship. Eleanor discovered a love for gardening, transforming a neglected patch of Frederick's yard into a vibrant explosion of color and fragrance. She felt alive, vibrant, filled with a sense of purpose and belonging she had thought was lost forever. One sunny afternoon, while meticulously tending her new flower garden, Eleanor saw a familiar blue sedan pull into the driveway. Her heart gave a little lurch. Liam. She watched as he slowly got out of the car, looking a little older, a little more tired than she remembered. His shoulders slumped. Frederick, who had been on the phone inside, answered the door. Eleanor watched through the window as they spoke for a few minutes, Liam gesticulating vaguely, Frederick listening calmly. After a moment, Frederick turned and walked toward her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "He wants to talk to you," he said gently. I told him it was your decision. Eleanor nodded, taking a deep breath. She had known this day might come. She walked into the living room, a space now filled with her own touches, her favorite books, a vase of fresh flowers. Liam was standing awkwardly in the center of the room, his gaze lingering on the comfortable furnishings, the evident warmth and prosperity of the home. His eyes seemed to scan the room, perhaps looking for evidence of the old woman he knew. But she was gone. Liam cleared his throat, avoiding her gaze. He shuffled his feet, clearly uncomfortable. "Grandma," he began, his voice surprisingly subdued, "things have been difficult since you left. Really difficult. The kids, they miss you. Lily cries for you almost every night, asking where you are." Eleanor felt a pang of something akin to sadness, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memory of his and Seraphina's cruelty. She remained silent, allowing him to continue. "Seraphina," he explained, "she's had to take a lot of time off work for childcare. It's really straining our finances. And honestly, the house is a mess without you." He looked at her then, a flicker of something that might have been hope in his eyes. "We were thinking we could offer you $20 a day just to watch the kids occasionally. A couple of days a week, maybe. Just until we get back on our feet." Eleanor looked at him, recognizing the old patterns of manipulation, the thinly veiled attempt to exploit her love for the children, to draw her back into their orbit. The paltry sum of $20 a day, after years of unpaid labor and the theft of her inheritance, was a stark insult. She smiled faintly, a calm, unwavering smile. "That's very generous, Liam," she replied, her voice steady, "but I'm afraid I'm not available." Liam's face flushed with irritation, his subdued demeanor quickly dissolving. "But they're your great-grandchildren, Grandma. They need you. Family comes first." His voice rose, tinged with his usual entitlement. Eleanor met his gaze, her own eyes clear and resolute. "You're absolutely right, Liam," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Family does come first. That's why I chose to marry a man who treats me like family, who cherishes and respects me, instead of staying with people who treated me like hired help." Liam's face flushed a furious red, the veins in his neck standing out in sharp relief. He tried to deny her words, his voice thick with a mixture of anger and wounded pride. "That's not... You're twisting things, Grandma." Eleanor, however, remained calm, her voice steady and resolute. She gently yet firmly interrupted his sputtering protest. "Oh no, Liam, I'm not twisting anything. I'm simply recounting the truth. The indignities of being made to eat in my room while you entertained. The humiliation of being hidden away from your guests, treated as a shameful secret. The constant threats of isolation from the children. Your attempts to use my love for them as a weapon to control me." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. "That's not how you treat family, Liam. That's how you treat a possession, a convenience." She continued, her gaze unwavering. "You offered me a home. The reality was a converted office, barely big enough for a bed, and free labor in exchange for my Social Security check and my dignity. You drained my resources, exploited my kindness, and then called me a burden." The truth spoken aloud in her beautiful new home felt liberating, a weight lifted from her soul. Liam stood up abruptly, his anger now laced with a frantic edge, realizing the conversation wasn't going as he'd planned. His face was a contorted mask of fury and panic. "Fine," he snarled, throwing his hands up in exasperation. "Have your fairy tale life with your rich husband, Grandma. But don't come crying to us when it all falls apart, because we won't be here to pick up the pieces." He turned abruptly, heading for the door, his retreat as ungracious as his arrival. Just as he reached the threshold, Eleanor's voice, soft but clear, stopped him. "I won't," she said, her tone devoid of malice, yet firm. "I won't come crying to you." She paused, then added, her voice tinged with a genuine, if fragile, hope. "But Liam, the door isn't completely closed. If you ever truly want a real relationship with your grandmother, one based on mutual respect instead of financial convenience or emotional manipulation, I'm willing to try, but it would have to be different. It would have to be real." Liam merely grunted, not turning back, and let himself out, the slam of the car door echoing through the quiet afternoon. After Liam left, Eleanor walked out into her thriving new garden, the one she had nurtured with such care. She sat on a rustic wooden bench surrounded by the vibrant blooms and finally allowed herself to cry. They weren't tears of sorrow for the life she had left behind, nor for Liam's harsh words. They were tears for the years she had lost, the decades she had spent believing she didn't deserve better, believing she was truly the useless, burdensome old woman Serafina and Liam had painted her to be. Frederick found her there a few minutes later, his presence a silent comfort. He simply sat beside her, wrapping her in a gentle embrace, asking no questions, offering only his quiet, unwavering support. 6 months later, life with Frederick was everything Eleanor had ever dreamed of, and more. Their days were filled with laughter, shared stories, and the quiet contentment of two souls finally reunited. She often read for hours in her sun-drenched room, or spent afternoons tending her beautiful garden. She felt cherished, respected, and truly alive. One afternoon, a small handwritten card arrived in the mail. The careful, slightly wobbly script on the envelope was instantly recognizable. Lily, Eleanor's heart fluttered. She opened it gently. "Dear Grandma Eleanor," it read, "I hope you are happy in your new house. I miss you very much. Daddy says maybe we can visit you sometime if you want." A wave of emotion washed over Eleanor. It was a small card, a simple message, but it represented an opening, a sliver of hope. She showed the card to Frederick, her eyes bright. "This," she said, her voice soft, "this is an opening for a real relationship with my great-granddaughter. A chance for connection, perhaps, without the toxicity." That afternoon, taking another deep breath, Eleanor called Liam's house. After a few rings, a bright, excited voice answered. "Hello? Lily, it's Grandma Eleanor." "Grandma!" Lily's voice was full of unbridled joy. "Daddy said you might call. I miss you." Eleanor's heart swelled. "I miss you too, sweet pea. And I got your card. It was lovely." She then spoke carefully. "Lily, I'd love for you to visit. You're invited to come to my new house, but only if your parents understand that this is my home, and I won't be hiding in the kitchen or staying out of the way. I'm family here, truly family." There was a muffled conversation on the other end, a hushed exchange between Lily and, presumably, Liam or Serafina. After a moment, Liam's voice, hesitant and a little defensive, came on the line. "Grandma?" Eleanor didn't mince words. "Liam," she said directly, her voice firm, "I'm not the same woman who lived in your house. I have a voice now, and I plan to use it. If Lily is to visit, it will be on terms of respect. I will not be treated as a servant or an inconvenience." She offered him a choice, clearly and without wavering. "If you can accept that, if you can respect my home and my boundaries, then you're welcome here, all of you. If you can't, that's okay too, but the choice is yours to make." There was a long pause on Liam's end, a heavy silence as he processed her unwavering resolve. Finally he spoke, his voice clipped. "We'll think about it." Eleanor smiled faintly into the phone. "You do that, Liam, and I hope you choose love. Real love, the kind that doesn't come with conditions, the kind that cherishes and respects, not exploits." As she hung up, a profound sense of peace settled over her. Frederick wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Eleanor," he murmured, his voice warm with admiration, "for refusing to go back to being small, for insisting on being seen, for insisting on being heard." Eleanor leaned back into his embrace, looking out at her blooming garden, at the beautiful life she had finally claimed for herself. And in that moment, she realized with absolute clarity, now I remember that I matter too. Her journey, though long and painful, had led her to a place where she was truly valued, loved, and respected. It was a new beginning, a testament to the enduring power of love, resilience, and the courage to reclaim one's own story.